All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Power Emini Friday group meeting. I'm Bill, and I have Jeffrey on the Skype, and he's going to talk about the new enhancements to the software and do an overview of the Micro-scalper. And so go ahead and take it away, Jeffrey.
Hey, Bill. Yeah, today what we're going to do is we're going to review where we're at with all the upgrades and what's happening with the software and the algos and talk about basically the new stuff. Just make sure everybody is on board with what's happening and where to go in the documentation. So we just recently did the upgrade to the 4.6.1, and this will probably be the stable software through the end of the year. Any kind of other changes and stuff we do will be done on the back end, on the server and with the algos and all that kind of stuff. But the software should be good probably till the end of the year. All right, so the big enhancement in 4.6.1, and you want to make sure that you got updated, and you can look at your version number up at the top of the software there, is when you click on the settings button, you're going to notice that we've got the two columns for the symbols and the two algos that are currently running. So the latest enhancement that we're going to talk about today, we've got another enhancement coming on the back end with the momentum breakout system, or the new power target algo, but that's coming probably next week, and that'll just take place on the back end. But the power scalper now has been converted over to our new micro trader. So what we got is we've got a true scalper now. Before we had a algo hooked up that you could use it for scalping, you could use it for trying to take bigger, longer term positions in the market. But this new algo is really finely tuned, and we're going to kind of talk about that today. So what you're going to want to notice is, again, in your settings button, you pop up the settings screen, and this is where you can pick and choose the algos that you want. Now, I recommend that you don't check all of them, right? I mean, you obviously go in and take a look at the different things, but when you decide what you're going to trade, it's best for bandwidth purposes and the speed of transmission and all that on your end. Don't have too much stuff trying to run. It could maybe turn into a memory hog. But pick the check boxes that you're going to trade. And so in this version, in this update now, all of the power scalper checkboxes now are enhanced to the new micro scalper algo, right? We're going to review that a little bit today. All right, so also in this new upgrade, you're going to notice that when you click on the tutorial button, our back-end documentation is all enhanced, and we're going to be working on that. We have a lot of stuff built up over the years, all good training videos and whatnot, but to be able to focus on the latest stuff so that you're in tune with what's going on with the software now and the new algo. Right up at the top, we put the pertinent videos that you're going to want to watch. There's 4 of them. I would go in and if you haven't seen them recently, go in and review them. You're going to notice in that first one there's a little bit of stuff that's out of date by a few weeks. I'm talking, in that video, I'm probably talking about the upgrade and stuff, which has already happened, but for the most part. But the one you really want to focus on is the trading the power scalper system. That second video, it's a little over an hour, and that's a must-see video. And you're going to want to go in and focus on that. So again, that's right in the software, in the tutorial button. It's going to get you to this new knowledge base where we're going to be putting all of our training materials. So if you're going to be trading this new micro scalper on one of the symbols, go in and do a review of those 4 videos. Very important. Now, I've talked about this before, but let's just do a quickie review. The new concept is based on something I think is really cool. It's a really unique, new, fangled way to play off the futures market, and it lends itself perfectly to scalping as well. And I've talked about this in a couple of previous videos, but basically I did a bunch of research, computerized research, to determine if there was some kind of a time-related rhythm to the markets. And I came up with an 18 to 24 minute slot where we get increased by a wide margin. We get increased directional price movement. So being able to zero in on this time slot in the markets and focus on that really helps us give us an edge, okay? Because we're fine-tuning the time when we expect increased price movement and traction to occur. So the time slot is between 18 and 24 minutes. And then it also turns out that the average breakout move starts to occur roughly 2 to 3 minutes into the time slot. So that's what allowed me to pick like a 20-minute timer. And the reason I picked a timer at all is so that you as the individual trader could set your trades to a clock, right? If I just said, well, it could occur between 18 and 24 minutes, well, then now you got like a, that 6-minute window in there where it could occur. Here you have a definite timer that counts down, and it's going to get you to the next trade setup. So trading the new Power Micro-scalper, this is a really good enhancement on what we were running, and we'll talk about the pros here as we go along. But the concept is, and this is the 4.61 upgrade of the software now, has this for each of the symbols that we're running, the ES, the NQ, YM, CL, and the 6E. So those are all the -S channels. What will happen then is you'll get this countdown timer, and that's going to alert you to when the next setup will occur. So the real big advantage to this new concept is that you can set your trading to a clock, and you know how many setups you're going to get also. So for instance, you come in at the market open, and you know you're going to get basically 3 setups per hour, and let's say that you decide, you schedule that you're going to trade the first 2 hours of the session, which is where we get typically the best liquidity and the best price traction, right? Is that first 2 hours of the session, because that is the U.S.-European overlap. So we got increased volume. So let's say you were going to do that. So you've got 6 trade setups that you know that you can play. Every morning you can play those. And by the way, these algos now run 23/6, right? They're going to be running after hours, pre-market, so you can take advantage of trading off them as well at those times. So the concept then is that you can really regiment your trading approach. It gets you away from having to sit around and wonder, oh, I wonder if we're going to get a setup today, or when it's going to happen. And the darndest things occur where your eyelids get droopy and you run off to the kitchen to get a cup of coffee or something, and then you come back and you see you've missed the move, right? So this helps eliminate those kinds of issues because, again, we can set our trade setups to the clock. Now, the software and the algos have used this algorithm that I developed. We call it the dynamic trigger range, and I can calibrate it and set it in different ways. And so the new Micro-scalper dynamic trigger range is very finely tuned. So here's what we get then. We get a combination of the best of the both worlds. We get a time slot, to the clock of when we know a new setup is occurring, so you can come back to the computer right at that point in time. And then we also have a very finely tuned dynamic trigger range that is calibrated perfectly for these types of breakouts and these types of increased price action that we're going to get in these time slots, right? So we're basically sandwiching the two new enhancements together, and it creates a real powerful scalping system. So today what we are doing is we want to just review what's going on and the basics, and then I'm going to refer you back to those training videos that I showed you, because those are pretty extensive, some of those. And so what we're doing here is getting a dynamic trigger range that gets generated at the 20-minute mark throughout the session, and after the session. And we're going to trade breakouts, initial breakouts that occur, right, where price is leaving the dynamic trigger range. We're going to be trading pullbacks to the edges of the ranges. And then there's also a little trick setup that I showed you where you can trade pullbacks to the 18 simple moving average. Also detailed in that second training video, the must-see video, is we're going to review each one of these types of chart patterns. Now, the other big enhancement that came with this upgrade is that we're trading off of a 20-second chart. Now, that's the recommended time frame to take advantage of these setups to play off this new micro-scalper dynamic trigger range. And you can continue to trade off a 1-minute chart. You can trade off a range chart. So some of the platforms don't have 30-second charts. I think there's only one that doesn't. Actually, TradeStation doesn't either, but you can go to a 30-second or a 15-second. So, but the 20-second chart is the recommended time frame. Now, some folks think, whoa, that's like a really fast time frame. That's too fast for me. Here's the thing. The dynamic trigger range, the algo, does the work for us to get us the trade setup. If you're trying to find trade setups on a 20-second chart, yeah, good luck, because a 20-second chart can whip around real quick, and if you're trying to find some kind of a pattern or setup on that time frame, that's hard to do, trying to pick your entries off of a 20-second chart. But remember, the dynamic trigger range does all the heavy lifting for us and gets us right to their finely tuned trading range. And then we use the 20-second chart to fine-tune our entries and trailing our stops and that type of thing, right? So that's what that's about. When you go in and watch that video, there's basically 4 types of setups that I covered, and they're very basic. And once you watch the price action enough, over and over and over, how we get follow-through off of the dynamic trigger range on the new Micro-scalper, you're going to see these patterns repeat over and over and over, and they're very playable. Like today I saw like a whole bunch of them. I could have grabbed some screenshots just from today's trading and put them up as examples, but there's a bunch of examples in that one video. So basically our tried and true method is when we're playing like an initial breakout is to look for a 2-bar breakout range on a 20-second chart, which I'll show you an example in a minute. We can play off a large range bars. We can play pullbacks, like I said, to the edges of the ranges, and we can play trend line breaks. And then there is the 18 simple moving average touch, which I think I have a good example of that too. Okay, so our tried and true setup breakout method is to wait for 2 20-second bars to penetrate either the top or the bottom of the range, and then we play off of that little micro range. Okay, now the other thing is that what we're trying to do here, folks, when we trade, remember the futures market's very highly leveraged. And so if we're going to start trading size and we're going to be taking scalp entries, then we don't want to give back very much, right? If you're going for a 1.5, 2 points, you don't want to have stops of 4 points, right? It's backwards. The new enhancement allows us to not only time our entry off these little 2-bar ranges, but then we can also protect that 2-bar range. And I discussed that over and over in that new training video that you're going to want to watch. Okay, I go into all the details on that. When we're taking entries and when we're playing the market like this, we're basically fishing. We're trying to hook into something that is going to take off quickly in our favor, run a little bit, hit our targets. Maybe we can get into a bigger move and trail our stop on let's say half of our position, but we don't want to give too much back at the beginning. It's entirely possible in either dull or super erratic markets, you can have 3 stop outs in a row. So you don't want to bury yourself in a hole that is difficult to climb back out of with future trades. So the concept here is we're not trusting the market further than we can throw a grand piano. We're going to be protecting as tight as we physically can with the technical stop, but we're trying to hook into something that can really take off for us. Okay, and has a high percentage, probability percentage of let's say hitting basic targets. Like with the ES, I would say easily basic targets would be 1.5 to 2 point targets. Those are easily achieved when we get breakouts. And then a lot of these breakouts of the dynamic trigger range can turn into good runners. So along, as many of you know, if you're on the Ninja platform, either 7 or 8, we have a on-chart companion indicator that's included for free with your membership. It's just an extra. Obviously, if you're using one of the other platforms, you're going to be dragging your horizontal lines around manually on your charts. Not a big deal. It's the same information. You can still trade off of it. But the Ninja indicators help out a little bit. So here's an example of what the Ninja 8 dynamic trigger range indicator looks like. The vertical dotted line is the timer, and then the new range goes into place. You can see we got the breakout there, and this is an example of just playing the initial breakout off of 2 20-second bars, right? And then protecting that same zone. Now in the video I described, you can keep a wider initial stop of, let's say, a couple points, 2 points, but and you can keep it there for a while, but you'll want to have a horizontal line that you draw under like your little pivots or whatever, and you can use a mental stop. Then you're going to have a hard stop in case you faint or something. You have to always have a physical stop in, but you can just pull the trigger and exit on a visual trigger if your price goes below your line there. But what we're looking for is increased directional price movement once we break out of the dynamic trigger range. So you're going to see that again. Now you got a really cool new algo that gives you timed slots on the clock to sit down at the computer and trade off of. A very new enhanced dynamic trigger range. And then because we went down to the real micro fine tuning of 20-second chart, then we've got ways to really fine tune our decision making. Okay, what we've done is, if you think about it, we've enhanced the way we were doing scalping before in 3 different ways basically. And there's a lot of setups and a lot of videos on the YouTube and here and there about scalping, but I don't think any of them get down to this level of fine tuning that we've been able to calibrate together. Here's an example of a short play where again, what we want to do is we want to think of any of the dynamic trigger ranges. Those are noise zones. So when we have to make the assumption when price is within the noise, it's going to be stuck, right? When it can break out into the free and clear, it has a chance to run in a direction. So we're looking for enhanced, increased directional price movement when we break out of the dynamic trigger range. So notice here, and again, this is a 20-second chart, and in this example, you can see how we broke down, and then one of the setups is that we pull back towards the dynamic trigger range. You can see we got a little bit of a pullback there, and what you're going to notice in a lot of the patterns in the video, some of the patterns I show you in the video, we play off of a lot of the traditional little patterns. So here's a little bearish descending wedge or bearish flag, if you will, right below the dynamic trigger range, right? So we know when and a trend line break. So we get a trend line break and voila, we're in. And then you can see we get a much bigger move. So in this example, let's say you were playing a stage position where you're going to take half off. You could have easily captured, after the trend line break there, you're easily capturing 2 points on that first move down to like 29.70. And then if you held the rest, you can see how you ended up getting additional points there. All right, and these are just some random examples that we pulled out recently. So here's another example where we get the new dynamic trigger range at the 20-minute mark, and then we break out, and you can see how we had a little ascending wedge there, and the blue line is that 18 SMA, and I go over that in the training video, and that's a little companion indicator. A lot of times I get folks ask me, well, what else should I use? What other indicators do help? And so we want to keep things as simple as possible, because remember, the dynamic trigger range does the work. That's what determines the trading levels. So you don't have to have too many gadgets on your chart to help you, because they're not going to help you. They're just going to confuse you. The dynamic trigger range has already got everything it needs built into it to get us to the trading hotspots. The one additional thing that is a little visual reference point, and this is a very simple thing, it doesn't clutter your chart up too much or anything, is the 18 SMA. And that's the blue line. And so you can see there how that kind of acts as a little guide. You can see that the 18 SMA was sloping up, and you can easily see that wedge forming then right at the lip of the dynamic trigger range, and then we get the bust out, and then we even get another little pullback towards that 18 period before it really blasts off. So this is an example, and the neat thing about this, again, folks, this is micro trading, and getting down to the 20-second chart allows you to be a micro trader. In other words, you're not staring, each one of those bars is not 5 minutes and then you got to wait another 5 minutes and another 5 minutes. These are 20-second bars, so the setups occur relatively quickly and they're totally visual. So for instance, in this example, I could have marked it up. When we got that first little breakout, green great breakout bar on the first trend line break there that we drew, you can see right below that on the 20-second chart is a perfect little pivot that runs down and touches the 18 period. Your stop would go right below that, right? So you're doing a micro entry and you're protecting your position at a micro level, and then you're hooking into a big move. And so we ran all the way up to 37 from like an entry around 23. Not bad, right? 10 point move. So and we maybe would have risked a point or point and a half on that if we stopped out under that little pivot. So you see how we've enhanced things here, and it gets you right to the hot spots. We're on a timed basis, and then we have these micro setups now to play off of the 20-second chart. And that way you're not waiting around all day, folks. That is one of the big hindrances a lot of times of day trading, is sitting and waiting and sitting and waiting and sitting and waiting, and then you throw in the towel and you miss all the action. So here we have things very finely tuned now. So just to reiterate, if you've done your 4.6.1 upgrade, then take the time this weekend, click on the tutorial button. It's going to take you to the brand new Power Emini knowledge base, where we're going to be putting all of our new documentation. We're going to get all that documentation kind of cleaned up, but all of the stuff pertinent to the new micro trader that we've been talking about here today is in those 4 videos. The first one there just kind of covers, again, the concept a little bit. The one you really want to watch is that second one, Trading the Power Scalper System. That's a must-see. And then you can watch those other two. And the final one there, the ATM strategies, that shows you some basic ATM strategies that you're going to want to utilize trading off of the new Micro-scalper. So this is our alert software, a state-of-the-art alert software. It's desktop alert software. It's platform independent, which means it doesn't matter if you're in TradeStation, Thinkorswim, Ninja, it doesn't matter. You can install this. It's its own software. You're going to get all the alerts, targets, trailing stops, that kind of thing. All right, and so, sign up today, start trading tomorrow. It's Ninja Trader users get the on-chart companion indicator at no extra charge, included with the regular membership.